All I know is sometimes, if there's too many white folks, I get nervous. Get out. Aces scares me. He looks at the files and it's all evidence against Chiamaka. Yearbook pictures of Devon and Chiamaka with their eyes crossed out, where Aces hints that Chiamaka is a murderer. Chiamaka notices that there is a car that is trailing behind her. This is only a taste of it, Chiamaka. This is gonna get worse for you. He turns around and sees that computer 17 is not only on, but logged into a website. Okay. Devon finds the web page that Aces was logged into, called the Ace of Spades Secret Society. Ass, if you will. I'm sorry, that's the only joke I'll make from now. Okay. On this webpage is the school, Niveus, their motto, their principles, and their values, which are generosity, grace, determination, integrity, idealism, nobility, excellence, respectfulness, and eloquence. A very long list of school values. There is a little character in the corner of this website that says, press enter for a surprise. And when Devon does, the first letter of each of these words is all that remains, right? It drops the rest of the word. Only the first letter is seen. And then it unscrambles to spell out a phrase. It says, N-word, E-R, heart, R, N-word, die. And that's just the beginning. Devon also sees a list of tasks that he assumes are associated with the incidents that have been going on with him and Chiamaka. He specifically sees that the person that was in charge of distributing his messages was his best friend, Jack. Aces is not just one person. Aces is so many people that he has known, gone to school with for the past 4 years, and they're all part of it. And not only that, he sees files going back to 1965. It's separated between boys and girls. In 1965, the first victim of Aces is a woman named Diana Walker. And in this file, he sees a picture similar to Chiamaka's that was posted in the school, where she is also passed out drunk. He's finding a lot of evidence that the Aces that is tormenting them now has been tormenting students since 1965. Devon quickly sees that this webpage is like starting to black out, like it's erasing itself essentially. So he quickly takes out his phone and starts snapping pictures. He manages to get 3 photos of the website before it completely blacks out. Now we're on part 3. We're in Chiamaka's perspective. It is Sunday. So she runs away from the school. And the reason she did was because the hooded figure that they saw at the computer was the girl that she thought died when Jamie hit her with his car. Chiamaka has essentially seen a ghost. So Chiamaka ended up losing her phone as she ran from the school. So the next day, on Monday, Chiamaka talks with Ava. She talks with Ava and Ruby. She's trying to save face. She's like, I need to be with my friend groups again, right? Jamie confronts Chiamaka about kissing Belle, and Chiamaka's like, I'm sorry you couldn't bag a baddie. I don't know what to tell you. Devon ends up rushing up to Chiamaka, and he's like, we need to talk now. He's been texting her since Sunday, but since she doesn't have her phone, she hasn't been receiving the messages, and he's very freaked out, which she sees, and she's like, okay, maybe we do need to talk. Devon shows Chiamaka all the evidence that he took pictures of on his phone. They start searching the name Diana Walker on the website, and they can't find anything. They can't find any kind of news article, Facebook account, nothing linking Diana Walker to ever existing. They don't want to say it, but they're like, maybe we can't find any information on Diana Walker because Aces killed her. This is when they realize that they could actually die. Just to put this in perspective, this is week 2. So Devon goes to the music room. He's like very incredibly unnerved. Like, he does not feel safe. He does not feel comfortable. Everyone that he's ever known is probably an enemy to him. He's not doing good. He meets with Mr. Taylor, his music teacher, someone who he has a lot of trust and faith, and someone who he has confided in for the last 4 years of his education. He decides, against his better judgment, that he needs to tell Mr. Taylor what's going on. So he talks to Mr. Taylor about Aces and that he's really scared that someone could actually hurt him. And Mr. Taylor starts laughing. Mr. Taylor, as it turns out, is also in on aces. So Mr. Taylor told Devon that he would fix some of his absences from classes because, again, the Niveus seniors can do this. They can ditch their normal classes if they're working on projects that are supposed to help them get into like these really good colleges. Mr. Taylor told Devon that he was going to help him out. Mr. Taylor was like, no, I'm sorry. Don't worry, Devon. Not everyone can get into Juilliard. This is for the best. Essentially says that he's not going to help Devon and that he should just quit. And again, this line comes back. Devon keeps saying, I need to get out. Devon starts like running from the school. He's like, I need to take Chiamaka. We need to leave now. So he's like banging through like all these classrooms. He's looking for her everywhere. He's like, I need to get out. He like starts fleeing from the school. Someone tries to stop him. Someone tries to lock him into the school. He manages to like dart through like the gates at the last second. When he turns around, it's Principal whatever the fuck his name is, trying to keep Devon in the school. We are back in Chiamaka's perspective. It's Monday. She has not escaped with Devon. So Chiamaka goes to the library, again, the Morgan Library where computer 17 is located. She finds the yearbook from the year 1965. She notices that there's also a Confederate flag on this yearbook. Funny enough, Chiamaka noticed that the amount of Black students that went to Niveus starts to slowly decrease as the years go on. She finds a picture in this yearbook of a group of students at a camp, specifically called Camp Aces. She sees all this evidence, she takes a picture, and she sends it to Devon. Again, she found her phone. Great. So now she can see all his text messages. She sends him this picture. While she has her phone unlocked, she gets a notification from Facebook of all social media platforms. And it's one of Belle's Facebook notifications. It's a picture of her. I forgot what she was doing. Oh, she's next to a crocodile or something, right? Someone comments immediately before Chiamaka can make a comment. Someone comments before her. Chiamaka clicks on this person's profile and pictures start flooding the timeline. Pictures of the person that was at the computer on Sunday, aka the person they hit with their car, aka Belle's sister. So, back to Devon. Same fucking day. Okay. Devon goes to Terrell's house. He's like really freaked out. He needs to decompress. Terrell tells Devon, have you even decided to like look up Niveus on the internet, like see any news articles about them? And he was like, no. Apparently, so Terrell gets on his little computer, does some research. He's like, you know what Niveus means in Latin? He's like, Niveus is Latin for white. He also says that the school was established in 1717 and funded mostly by slave owners. And he specifically mentions it was established in the year 1717. And Terrell says, isn't it a coincidence that it was established that year and the ACEs information was found on computer 17? One, that also goes back to that little note that Jamie had left at Chiamaka's house that said 1717, which I only put together right now. Okay. One. Two, Devon never told Terrell what computer number it was. That was never information he shared with him because he didn't want Terrell to worry. He didn't tell him that specific information. How does Terrell know about computer 17? You see what I mean by like a really steady buildup of tension and suspense? Like when I say snowball, this is the definition of snowball. So Devon is now freaked out. He's like, how do you know about computer 17? And he's like, oh, you told me. Gaslighting. Devon goes home and tells his mom. Like he's like, Mom, do you know someone named Terrell? And she's like, you remember Terrell? And he was like, how does everyone know who Terrell is? And I don't. That's when we find out that Devon did in fact kiss Terrell when he was younger. But some boys found Devon when this happened. They beat him incredibly badly and his mother kind of helped him out. So she knew. She's been knowing since this point that he was gay, but she said that she didn't want to pressure him to come out to her until he was ready. And she specifically says that after this moment that Devon did not leave his room for a very long time. And then all of a sudden it was like he forgot. His trauma forced him to forget this moment. Devon is very tearfully coming out to his mother. It made me cry, this chapter, because she's just so accepting of him, so loving, which is like, of all the things that happen in this book, this like compounding dread, it gets worse and worse, and people continue to betray and betray and betray. Their house is filled with so much love, and to know that in this world that's so hostile towards them, that he can still count on his mother to love and accept him is so comforting. It was so beautiful. I did cry while I was reading it. After this moment, he starts getting ready to meet up with Chiamaka, but he gets a text from Dre. We're still on fucking Monday. Holy shit. Okay. Chiamaka goes to confront Belle after school. She just figured out that Martha is her sister, and she has a sneaking suspicion that Belle knew all along about this all happening. Belle admits that the camp they go to every summer is also Camp Aces. Belle tells her that it's a family tradition, that they've all participated in it, and that camp is where they learn about the principles and values of the Aces mentality, aka they learn the importance of white bed sheets and why they should wear them. She calls it social eugenics, which, if you didn't know, eugenics is an idea. Let's get a Google definition on here, huh? Eugenics: the study of how to arrange reproduction within a human population to increase the occurrence of heritable characteristics regarded as desirable. In our society, eugenics is mainly brought up with people trying to preserve certain colors, namely white. Okay, that's what they're doing at a fucking high school. So Belle admits that she was like, it sounded simple enough. You just get 2 kids to drop out, because that's the whole thing. Every 10 years, Niveus Academy admits 2 Black students with the goal that they will let them go through school, let them have their hopes and dreams kind of build up. They're like, yes, I made it out. I can have all these great things in my life, only for their senior year for it to all be thrown to shit and Aces to come out, destroy their reputation, and force them to drop out of the school. Psychological warfare is what they're practicing. And Belle was in on it. But then she met Chiamaka, and she's like, oh my god, you're actually a human being. Supposedly, Miss Belle tried to stop it from happening, but she's like, it's just so big. The system, I can't do it. And she says, Niveus is not the only academy that does this. It happens all over the fucking country. Chiamaka is like, you know what? I'm gonna go home now. She leaves. Devon shows up because she told him to meet her there. They leave together. Now we're on Tuesday. The text that Devon got from Dre was to let him know that Dre was in prison. Apparently, he was also beaten, borderline tortured every single night by some men that I guess he answered to, because they found out that Devon and Dre were together romantically. Dre was also arrested by police on some drug-related charge. The start of this chapter is Devon remembering the last time he was there, which was the last time he also spoke to his father, who we learn has also been incarcerated. And for some reason, on this last meeting that they had, his father told him that he didn't want to see him again, and his mom didn't want him to see him either. So Devon has never spoken to his father after that moment. He is talking to Dre, and they're having a little heartfelt moment. Dre has no one in his life, no mother, no father, no one that would care to come visit him, no one that would care to help him get out of prison. They end up they start talking about something else, because Dre doesn't really want to focus on that. He wants to just have a good time with Devon. So Devon asks him about his jumpsuit. He's wearing an orange one, and he's like, oh yeah, all the new people have to wear it. Everyone wears different colors based on the crime. He remembers that when he saw his father, he was wearing a white jumpsuit. So he asks him, what does white mean? And Dre tells him that the white jumpsuit means you're on death row. Devon is like, holy shit, my father was on death row? He starts feeling very panicked. He's like, how much time does he have left? I haven't spoken to him in I think he says 2 years. I needed to talk to him. They take Dre away, and Devon goes back to the secretary, who is a very nice Black woman. And he's like, hey, can you look up my father and see if he's accepting visitors? Only to find out, not only has Devon's father already been put to death, September 9th, which is the day that he remembers when this chapter starts, was the last time he saw his father and the last day of his life, and he had no idea. Devon feels some anger, resentment towards his mother for not telling him, especially because he feels that he's been robbed of an opportunity, that he would have asked his father so many more questions. They would have talked about other things, and he wouldn't have felt angry for the last few years that his father didn't want to see him. And he feels that he was robbed of his opportunity to say bye to his father, which is very valid for him to feel. Later on in that day, they all go back to Terrell's house to talk about the plan. They decide as a collective that they are going to break the news story to Channel 1 News, I believe it's called. Essentially, they're going to go to the press. They're going to try and get them to share their story to the world. We are now on Wednesday. This is the day that they're supposed to meet the channel people, right? Devon that morning, so he's not really on board with the plan. He doesn't think it's a good one, but they don't really have any other options. To take back some of the power that he feels that he doesn't have over the situation, he decides to make a tweet about Niveus Academy and what they're doing, including the photo evidence that he took. He makes the tweet, doesn't think about it, goes on with his day. He goes to Chiamaka's house and she has him drive to the news station. Again, she's not comfortable driving. She's been through a trauma. Once they are like on the road, almost immediately, they get fucking pulled over by the police. They turn into an alley. They switch seats really quickly because Devon doesn't have his license and she made him drive. While they're talking to police, Devon is very nervous. He notices that Chiamaka has not been given the same talk that he was given by his mother about what to do when interacting with the police. He's very on edge. He's like, I have to have my hands out. I have to be respectful. I have to do this, this, and that. Eventually, the police officer lets them go and they just have a moment and Devon is like crying. Like they are both very stressed, but he is incredibly terrified throughout this whole interaction. So they like have a moment together, they like hold hands and they're like, it's okay, we're okay. So in Chiamaka's perspective, they pull up to the news station. They go inside and they give all their evidence, their testimony to this news reporter named Miss Donovan. Instead of publishing it in just the newspaper, they want to broadcast it live on television. She says, hey, is there like a event where a lot of people will be at? And she's like, oh my God, the Snowflake Ball is happening tomorrow. Chiamaka is going to give a speech at the Snowflake Ball talking about everything that they've been through. The news people are going to sneak in to the school and catch the whole thing on camera. This is their plan going into Thursday. That Thursday, Devon wakes up super late and he realizes that his tweet has gone viral. So he rushes over to Chiamaka's house. She helps him get ready. She puts on some eyeliner on him and it looks really good, which I know she ate. These next chapters on Thursday are very like lightning quick. They go back and forth between Devon and Chiamaka. It's really cool to experience, but hard to give my synopsis. I'm gonna get into it. Okay. Devon and Chiamaka meet back up at Morgan Library. This is where they help sneak in the news people because there's no CCTV footage. Like it would be easy to get them in. Terrell ends up meeting Devon up at this library where he admits that he helped Aces. I know. We get very little time to absorb that information. We go back to Chiamaka's perspective. So the camera crew manages to get in the school without Devon's help. He was supposed to let them in, but obviously he is occupied right now. Chiamaka is met with Jamie in the library. Jamie confronts Chiamaka and threatens her to leave before things have to get ugly. Jamie is also in on Aces. He is one of the people that went to that camp over the summer that she was talking about. He's a legacy. She calls his bluff and says that he is essentially a little piss boy. So Chiamaka is like, I know that you liked me, Jamie. You can pretend all you want. You can say that. I know it must have had your little racist heart thumping when I gave you the time of day. So she's like really like egging him on and Jamie is furious. He burns a piece of her hair and then after she starts like egging him on, he slams her against a wall and starts choking her out. But Chiamaka is not going down without a fight. She's not a damsel in distress. Of course not. Chiamaka summons all her strength and kicks him hard as fuck in the balls. And then after that, he's on the ground, right? And he's like, I'm a man. This hurts, right? And then she goes up to him. She takes the heel of her Jimmy Choos and smashes it right in the banana. I'm gonna say there's a lot of like building up dread, a lot of things where you're like, ugh, I hate that this happens, but it's inevitable, right? Like, but then there's also so much payoff. Like Devon got to beat the fuck out of Jack. She, like a queen, stepped on him in Jimmy Choos. Like that is the definition of queen behavior and very satisfying. Very satisfying. So we're back to Devon. He's just found out that Terrell was helping Aces. Terrell says that some guy came to their school. Again, his sister is very sick. They offered to pay off his sister's medical expenses if he spied on Devon. He thought he might do it. He's like, okay, like I have to. It's probably bad, but I have to do it. But then he started like meeting Devon and he's like, you're a nice guy. I can't do that for you. That dude that also went to his school was like, you can't tell Devon because if you do, it'll just be worse for him. So Terrell was just trying to like drop hints the whole time, even though he knew exactly like who was behind Aces. Devon is very upset and he runs back into the school and he's like, Devon, get away from me. My notes on this next part are a little scattered. I got to a point where I'm like, I can't take notes. I just have to listen and hear it. Okay. Devon and Chiamaka walk into the ball. It is a masquerade ball. Chiamaka runs up to the stage and grabs the crown and puts it on her head. She sees Miss Donovan and her camera crew have made it into the ballroom. They're disguised as waiters. Miss Donovan gives her like the signal to start talking, and Chiamaka gives a speech about everything that her and Devon have been subjected to by aces, the racism in the school, and she's like, we're not going to stand for it anymore. You guys will not beat us. She gives this speech. The principal comes on stage, and he's essentially like, wow, nice speech. Is that it? He's being very condescending to her, and she's like, this is getting broadcasted all over national television right now. And he turns and he's like, Alice, is that true? And the news reporter, Mrs. Donovan, is like, no, of course not. She was in on it. Aces, Nivius has paid off the entire news channel. Devon and Chiamaka are like, we're fucked. We're surrounded by people that are complicit in aces and all this stuff. The sea of white takes off their masquerade masks and switches them out for the grotesque aces masks. So the principal gives them one last chance to drop out, run away, and they're like, no, we're not going to do that. And he's like, okay, you want the Diana Walker treatment? That's fine. So before the crowd of people can get onto Devon and Chiamaka, suddenly they hear a rumbling coming upon the school, right? The doors bust open, and who comes in? A crowd, a surge of protesters that were rallied together by Devon's tweets. There's chaos everywhere. A mass of protesters, all these like people, aces, everything. There's also a specific quote. They look out onto the sea of masks and they're like, this is aces. And it's just so much more chilling because like thinking it was only one person is already like, man, like they're going through such extensive efforts to like smear their reputation. But then you just realize like it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's not just one person, but so many people that are wearing this mask. And it's a dreadful reveal. Truly. It fills you with so much dread because you know that like before the protesters come in, they're alone. No one is there to help them. No one is on their side. But then all the protesters come in and you feel hopeful as the reader. But then all of a sudden, Chiamaka feels something cold and metal against her head. As the principal points a gun to her head, he takes Chiamaka away and tries to like usher her out of the ballroom. And she's trying to ask him like, what happened to Diana Walker? And he's like, you're going to find out. Meaning, as we know later, Diana Walker died. Devon tries to knock the gun from the principal's hand. He's a lot sturdier than he gives the impression he is. Chiamaka ends up taking a taser out of her purse, tases the fuck out of him. Again, queen behavior. Love her. All of a sudden, there's like a loud bang, a lot of smoke starts billowing out, and they're like, okay, we have to leave now. So they all like start making a run for it. They run to the exits and eventually they spill out onto the Nivius grounds. They're outside of the building and they see it's burning. The whole building is almost entirely up in flames and they are like completely out of it. They're like, oh my fucking, like they just figured out that Aces is like all these people, the entire school. Like there's not an innocent person in that building. Everyone has been complicit trying to get them expelled and borderline trying to get them killed. Chiamaka tells Devon that she saw Terrell in there and he immediately starts getting freaked out and he's like about to run into the building, but they find Terrell and everything's fine and they feel like a sense of relief. They all decide to go to Terrell's house. They spend the night. A lot has happened. The next morning they see on television that they're reporting just that there was like a fire. Nothing about Aces, nothing about what happened from their perspective. Just that the building like completely went up in flames and that there were 3 casualties. A girl named Cece, who was a hater of Chiamaka, and she's like, oh man, she died. This boy, Daryl? I can't remember his name. But someone that Devon knew relatively well. And last but not least, the last casualty of this fire was Jamie. Chiamaka has very conflicting feelings. This was someone that has been her best friend since she was 14, and she only recently found out was incredibly racist. So Devon comforts her, and they end up walking to the beach together, and he tells her that it's okay for her to mourn the loss of Jamie. It's okay for her to feel sad that he died. They have like a heart to heart, which I really appreciate that. Like when you start this book, they're not like best friends. They're not really people that pay attention to each other. Their connection is very like superficial. They obviously know of each other because like they're the only Black students at the school, but their social circles never collide in any kind of way. They essentially come from different worlds. And as the story progresses, it's not like they immediately become best friends. They are like forced together by circumstance. They're definitely not friendly with each other for most parts, but eventually as the story goes on and they realize that they have more in common than they think, and the struggles that they're facing are shared. And, you know, for Devon, it's like, even though Chiamaka is like really like this preppy girl, super rich and comes from a completely different background and is perceivedly very uptight, she's still facing the same things that he is, and that she has the ability to have compassion and empathy. They care for each other and they will always look out for each other above all else, which I think is like a theme that resonates throughout the whole book, this idea of like community. Okay, I guess I'm in the analysis now. One thing, this is also another book where I think it's incredibly important to read the author's note. So the author wrote this book after coming into university and realizing oftentimes being in higher education and being surrounded by people who don't look like you can make you feel. She said that she grew up in a neighborhood that was, I believe she said like 80 to 90% Black, and then suddenly went to a university where people were asking her if that was her real hair, or like just making her feel very othered, which is something that needs to be examined more when people of color go into higher education and they realize that not everyone is looking out for them. There is such a sense of community when you are able to grow up in an environment with people that share your cultural backgrounds, your beliefs, your morals. So the epilogue of this book is much, much into the future. It opens with a letter to a mother that is trying to enroll her son into a private academy. This person that is writing the letter lets them know that this academy has been known to practice very racist and harmful tactics against its Black students, specifically citing the Diana Walker incident. And presumably this school is like the reincarnation of Niveus Academy. And this letter is signed by one Dr. Chiamaka Adebayo and Professor Devon Richards. They have created a school called Ruby Bridges Academy, and that specifically is meant to help Black students and save them from a fate similar to theirs and what they experienced in Niveus. So they're talking to each other in this future, and they're worried because this person's mother really wants them to go to that academy, and they're like, okay, we'll keep an eye out. We will make sure that no other Black student has to experience what they experienced going to Niveus. Devon and Terrell end up together. Beautiful, lovely. Devon ends up making amends with his mother. They live in a beautiful house. He was able to get her out of that neighborhood most wonderfully. The epilogue ends with Chiamaka attending to her last patient of the day, a man who is withering away, a shell of his former self, and is very, very, very obviously dying. And who is this man? The one, the only, Headmaster Ward. And that is the end of the book. I already went into my analysis a little bit, but I'm going to go into it a little bit more. So as I mentioned, this idea of community is a very heavy theme in this book. It has such a building sense of like dread, suspense. There's almost no like reprieve for the reader. Like anytime you want to trust a character, like you can't. And it goes back to what Terrell says, that every single person is like racist, whether or not it's like conscious or unconscious. Like, because the reality is that you can't just escape racism. It's something that has been ingrained into the infrastructure of our society. It's not something that goes away in one night. Obviously, this is a very extreme circumstances with ACEs, but the idea that it's everyone, that ACEs is every single person that you meet, that everyone is behind the mask. It's an extreme representation of a feeling that I think a lot of people of color experience when being in spaces like this. Again, the author wrote this coming from a dark place, being in a university where she was surrounded by people that did not look like her. When I was in high school, I went to a high school that was comprised of a lot of people of color. I believe it was like 70%. It was definitely something that I didn't appreciate and I didn't really think about until I went to college. being in an environment where it feels like everyone is against you. They don't believe the same things that you believe. They don't feel the same things that you do is incredibly alienating. I went from a high school where people spoke Spanish all the time to now having to defend wanting to speak my native language in classrooms, having to defend the stories I wanted to tell and the words that I wanted to use. It really felt like so many people were like against me. There's so many thoughts and yet not enough words to properly express everything that this book made me feel. More than anything, it made me feel incredibly validated because like that experience that you go through is something that like is talked about, but still feels really alienating when you don't have that sense of community. Community is so incredibly, incredibly important, especially amongst people of color. This book is so good. I can't believe I just had a signed copy of this book chilling on my bookshelf like it was nothing. I need a trophy case for this book, honestly. And, you know, even though it really emotionally put me through some turmoil, I think it was really important that a lot of the characters were untrustworthy, even like characters like Belle, who obviously when we meet her, we don't necessarily like her because we're rooting for her, for Chiamaka and Jamie to get together. For Belle to like still be in on it, even though like supposedly she was like, she had real feelings for Chiamaka or whatever. And it also communicates this idea where I think very oftentimes it's easy for people to be like, oh, I'm not racist. Like, I don't see color. They fall into these like roles as like allies to people of color and more specifically the Black community, where I think like it's very misguided. And of course, there's very extremes. Like Belle didn't necessarily do anything that was on the Aces agenda, but she was still complicit. She didn't help Chiamaka in any way. She didn't even let her know what was going on. So even though she wasn't the one sending the messages, gathering the evidence, doing all these things, she still had as much of a part to play as people like Jamie, Headmaster Ward, and all these people that were putting on the masks. Again, it really goes back to that quote from Terrell where he's saying that racism is everywhere. It's in everyone. The day that we can talk about it and not get defensive and say like, no, I'm not racist, I would never do that, like da 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 da. The day that we can talk about it and just have a conversation is the day that we can pop that bubble. The day that we can actually move forward, because it's so important to recognize the way that like racism is ingrained in so many people. It's so important that we take steps and consistently try to educate ourselves and not take away from the spaces and the voices of Black people and people of color. The reality is that it's in our structure as a society. It has been ingrained in our history, in every part of life for so long. And it's not something that you just unlearn overnight. It's not something that can be fixed, which is why, like, I myself make very conscious efforts to try and reverse it and like come to terms with the way that like we play a part, the way that we contribute without knowing it. And part of that is reading books from Black authors and highlighting them and hearing their stories and seeing their own similarities. Reading this book, I was incredibly comforted that this experience, this genuine fear, feeling like everyone is against you, is not a unique experience. And I knew it wasn't, but having it communicated in this way and like, it's just so life-changing. So yeah, that was Ace of Spades. More importantly, I'm so excited for the next book that Farida Abike Iyimide is coming out with. It's called, so her next book that she's coming out with is called Where Sleeping Girls Lie. So Where Sleeping Girls Lie will be published on March 14th of this year. So that's coming up very shortly. So what I am actually going to do is read the book. I know. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to all the reviews that everyone's going to come out with. So we're now headed into March. By the time this video goes up, it'll already be a week into March sometime, I think. March is actually my birth month. I know, I'm an Aries. For the month of March, I'm actually going to be reading just some of my little favorites. And we're going to start with, let me just squeeze right past you. We are going to start March with the sequel to one of my favorite books of all time. I bought the book when it came out, but I just couldn't bring myself to read it because I was so nervous for what was in store. But not today. The next video I will be posting is my review synopsis analysis of Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Please read Ace of Spades. It's so good. I hope you enjoyed this review. Very disjointed as it was. I had so much fun. I'm still processing a lot of emotions. I'm still getting over this mentally, but you know, I'm a tortured artist. I just have to come out with content. Check out Where Sleeping Girls Lie, coming out again March 14th of 2024. Follow Farida Abike Iyimide on Instagram and check out the cover artist as well. I will be linking them. That's it.